and on behalf of the DeLong family, they welcome you here for the celebration of life for Steve DeLong. And thank you all for being here. Tonight is a night of sadness, a night of joy, a night of memories, but it's also still a celebration. And so tonight, what we hope is that you'll see a reflection of Steve's life, not only through some testimonies of his life, but through his family and through his grandchildren and his children, and most definitely his most beautiful wife, Mara. Is such a testimony to who he was and his life that he lived for God. And so I'm just excited to be a little bit a part of this. And as we get started tonight, as we know, Steve served in the military, and we're going to have the honorary Marines come and present the flag this evening.
Dreamed I went to heaven, and you were there with me. We walked upon the streets of gold, beside the crystal sea. We heard the angels singing, and someone called your name. We turned and saw this young man, and he was smiling as he came. And he said, friend, you may not know me now. And then he said, but wait, you used to teach my Sunday school when I was only 8. And every week you would say a prayer before the class would start. And one day when you said that prayer, I asked Jesus in my heart. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life that was changed. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am so glad you gave. Then another man stood before you and said, remember the time a missionary came to your church, and his pictures made you cry. You didn't have much money, but you gave it anyway. Jesus took the gift you gave, and that's why I'm here today. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life that was changed. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am so glad you gave. One by one they came, far as the eye could see. Each life somehow touched by your generosity. Little things that you had done, sacrifices made, I noticed on the earth, in heaven now proclaim. And I know up in heaven you're not supposed to cry, but I am almost sure there were tears in your eyes as Jesus took your hand and you stood before the Lord. He said, my child, look around you, for great is your reward. Thank you for giving to the Lord. For I am a life that was changed. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am so glad you gave. Thank you for giving to the Lord. I am a life
At this time, we're going to ask Steve's brother in love, Ben Dorr, if he would come and read the obituary for us this evening.
Stephen Alton DeLong of Reynoldsburg, Ohio, went home to be with his Lord on Monday, December 20th, 2021. Steve was born on January 28, 1955, to Alton and Pearline DeLong. He was a wonderful husband, father, and papa. Steve worked for many years at the State Fire Marshal's office as a peace officer and proudly served in the United States Marine Corp. He loved the Lord and spent his life serving others in the community and his beloved church family. He and his wife, Mara, spent their 40 years together as foster parents, impacting the lives of many children they loved. Steve had a goofy sense of humor and made everyone around him smile. Mixed in with Steve's jokes were many encouraging words. A Buckeye at heart, he loved watching the games with his family. Steve also loved gardening, and he never met a hosta he didn't love. When he would leave the house after using his signature shoehorn to slide on his shoes, he always made sure to tell his wife that he loved her. Steve is preceded in death by his parents and survived by his loving wife, Mara, as well as children Jeremy and Sarah Ferguson, Aaron and Shanda DeLong, Joshua and Maylee DeLong, Lynn DeLong, and Raven DeLong. Grandchildren Riley, Grace, Summer, Riley, Corbin, Tyler, Trent, Keziah, and Ophelia, and too many foster children to number. DeLong Daycare alumni knew Steve as a father figure and lovingly called him Papa.
At this time, the family would like to open the mic. If anybody would like to share, we do have a few people that are going to share, and I'll be calling those up here in a minute. But if you have something that you would like to share, a memory or a thought of Steve and how he affected your life, we would love to honor him with your thoughts and memories. So you can just come up, and we're going to give a few minutes, and then we'll start those that we have designated to speak.
Sorry, I'm fairly short. I can't. All right. I remember my father as a loving, caring, Christ-like figure. He was always there for me and always will be. And I can't wait to be open in his arms and see him in heaven and just see his wonderful smile, his excellent grace, and beardless face. And I pray that one day that we all will see God and remember that he sacrificed for us as such as my dad sacrificed for the United States of America.
Alright, so most of you know I'm adopted, but what you might not know is my parents did not want to adopt any kids. They didn't want to adopt anyone. But my dad fell in love with me and really fast, and he convinced my mom, and it took a lot of convincing. but they ended up doing it. Even though I put them through a lot of crap, they never regretted doing it. I am so thankful he took a chance on me, and even though he got on my nerves most of the time with all his stupid jokes, I love him, and I will never forget what they did for me.
My son Reese is one of the DeLong daycare alumni. He started with Mara and Steve when he was 6 months old. And because of Steve's generosity, we were able to extend our time with them by 2 years because he was gracious enough to extend himself to do a little bit of transportation for us down the street to the local preschool. So we got to enjoy the family for a lot longer than we would have. And we were actually there when Lynn and Raven became part of the family, and you girls did a beautiful job. So proud of you for that. It's very hard to do. You did a wonderful job. So I just wanted to tell Mara that every day we still love you. You're still in our hearts. And I'm so thankful for Steve to give us 2 extra years as part of your family.
I'm like, am I on the list? I'm on the list. Do you want me to go sit down? It's weird to stand in this space. So I'm Aaron. I'm the middle son. And figuring out what to tell you guys. Like, talk about Dad. Maybe I'll try and keep it short. But what you may not know about Dad was Dad was, well, he was a really good man, but, you know, his life was really tough to start off with. That if I had to describe how he probably felt about himself, is he probably felt, as a kid, very unloved and very unworthy, discarded. And it's something really beautiful that happens in someone's life when they've experienced such tragedy, pain, and difficulties that he did growing up. Is my dad took his pain and turned it into his greatest strength. Because when you look at his life, he spent his life surrounding himself, collecting those who felt discarded and hurt too. You know, when he came into my life, he found my mom who had, I don't mean to put your business on blast, but it's been 40 years, I think people know. She was married before, and that marriage did not end well. And I think she would have felt discarded and unworthy and unloved because of what she experienced. And my dad came in. So I know what that feels like. And they had two little boys. She had two little boys. And I can't speak for my brother. I wouldn't dare put words in his mouth, but for me, I felt a little discarded by my own father. And he came along and he collected me, adopted me too, made me his son. And then he spent years surrounding himself by foster children who, again, I don't want to speak for them, but maybe they would say that they felt discarded as well, unworthy and unloved. And I always know my dad felt called to ministry. I think he felt like he was called to full-time ministry, vocational ministry, and it never happened for him, but my dad lived a life of ministry. And his ministry was loving those who felt discarded, who felt unloved and broken beyond repair. He loved so many. And it wasn't always this way for Dad. But something changed in him. And that something was that he met Jesus. Jesus was the ultimate and still is the ultimate collector of those who are broken and lost and feel unloved and feel like you don't belong. And when my dad met Jesus, the pain that he had in his life, my dad was not perfect, but he took his greatest pain and God redeemed it. And my dad used his life loving people who were discarded. He gave his life serving in churches, serving in difficult communities, in rough places. He gave himself. He gave all of himself. And the legacy that lives on in me is that I'm doing the same thing. And so many of you here are doing the same thing because of his impact in your life. And I think this is the greatest thing I can share about him, was his relationship with Jesus and how impactful it was to him. It completely changed the trajectory of his life. And I'm thankful he said yes to Jesus. And I'm thankful he continued his entire life saying yes. Because I am a life that was changed. And I'm not going to do like a full message, and I'm not going to ask anybody to raise their hands or come to the front or anything like that, but I'm just going to tell you this. His greatest joy was knowing Jesus. He found worth. He found a family and a community. He found healing. He found peace, hope. And if you find yourself without those things today, consider Jesus. Luke 19:10, Jesus said, I came to save those that were lost, those that feel broken and discarded and unworthy and unloved. And I think today the greatest thing that Dad would love is to know that his life made an impact on yours, and that today maybe you would consider Jesus. I love you, Dad.
I'd like to follow that up with Aaron. This is his son, Trent. And he wanted to speak tonight, but we understand. So I'm gonna speak for him, if that's okay, Trent. He says, I love you, Papaw. You mean so much to this family. And as much as we clown on you, you have always been the best Papaw in the world. The one and only Steve DeLong that could ever tell me that I'm his favorite grandson named Trent David. That's what he wrote, not me. The only grandpa that invested in my career and encouraged me and cheered from the sidelines with my work. The only grandpa that could blame passing gas on me, as stupid as that is. I miss you so much, I won't be able to say to you. So many memories I'd love to sit with you and laugh about. You are the goofiest person I've truly ever met. The only person I know that could turn a serious conversation into a joke. And it always cracked me up. You were always surprised when I told you about something I did at work. It made me feel like I had done so much. And that's from Trent DeLong. We'd like to have Zach Schoaf come and speak a word.
I've known Josh and the DeLong family since 3rd grade. So I've known Steve for most of my life. And I guess I just wanted to share a couple of my favorite memories of him. And they don't make men anymore like they did with Steve DeLong. He was a hard worker who accomplished a lot in life. But at the end of the day, his happy place was at home with Mara. If he had nothing else in this world, he had his family, and that's what mattered most to him. Probably my favorite memory of him was from years ago when me and him and Josh, we were playing Wii bowling, and he was kicking my butt in Wii bowling. And I hate losing, and he was having the greatest time rubbing it in my face. And there really wasn't anything I could say back to him. It was always me teasing him. I used to walk through the door. I'd put my arm around him. I'd say, hey, Pops, just here to eat all your food. And he'd always have some lame comeback and jokes. And the best part about it was it wasn't the joke itself. It was always how funny he thought they were. He'd be the only one laughing, and that's what made him funny. He was fine with all the cheesy jokes and comebacks because the things that mattered the most to him were the people in his happy place, in his home. And I think in basically every death, there are always things that people wish they would have said or told the person when they had the chance. But with Steve, it was never the words that were important. It was the actions that spoke the loudest, and it was the way he showed his love that said the most. You could see it in the adoration he had for Mara, the pride he had in Josh, the love for Aaron and Jeremy, all his grandkids, his adopted daughters, and all the foster kids that came through his door. Steve DeLong was simply a great man, and he'll be missed greatly.
And then we're just going to have Josh DeLong come and share a word, and he has a presentation for us as well.
First off, I'd like to say thank you all for coming out. My father would have been very touched with the outpouring of love. No one ever really knows where to begin when you're about to sum up a loved one's life in just a few words. You would think that after 38 years of calling him Dad, that the words would come easily. But they don't. And in fact, they're harder than ever to conjure. I could start by telling you what many of you know of Steve DeLong. He was an incredibly hard worker, often working 17-hour days. and he always made sure we had everything our hearts desired. I could tell you about his charitable heart and how it reached out and took in more foster children than I could even count. I could tell you about his deep love for God and his strong faith. I could tell you of his pride in his time as a Marine, his love for his fellow servicemen, or his intensely patriotic heart for his country, even though he believed they were putting mind-controlling drugs in our water. I could tell you about his rough childhood and how he achieved so much more than he ever thought possible given his upbringing. I could tell you these things as if I was repeating a song I knew by heart. I could tell you these things because I thought that's who my father was. For 38 years, this is what I thought I knew. Reba McEntire once wrote in a song, "The greatest man I never knew came home late every night." He never had too much to say, too much was on his mind. I never really knew him, and now it seems so sad. Everything he gave to us took all we had. The song always seemed to explain how I felt about my dad. I knew him as so many things, but I always wanted to know more. Who was he? What was his identity? What moved him? What was beneath the surface of all the past mentioned works and activities he did? My father was a private man about his childhood, emotions, friends, and almost virtually every aspect of his life. We knew him, but did we ever fully know our dad? Little did I know I would soon find out the hard way. Who really was this man we knew all of our lives? I'm sorry. When my father fell ill and was taken to the hospital, we were not permitted access to him because of the COVID pandemic. I honestly never really believed I would be standing here today speaking at his funeral. I truly felt he would be back home soon, back to razzing the girls, and looking for ways to dig up the frozen ground to get one more tulip bulb in hopes of making Mom happy come spring. Sadly, this would not be the case. And his condition worsened. And I never got the ability to talk with him one last time before he was unable to speak to us. And because of that distance, I started my journey into trying to know my father more. I spent those many nights that he was in the hospital watching countless hours of home movies of Dad and the family. Not just watching them, but studying them, trying to understand more of him, looking for more beyond what I already knew. And as every night passed and another tape was examined, I was no closer to what I thought I needed. I watched as the years moved on and us boys grew, Christmas after Christmas, watching my dad on the ground with his joyful smile as he watched his children open their gifts. Gifts that he had spent the last 3 months working countless overtime to buy for us, opened one after another after another. The gifts never seemed to stop. All the while, he happily watched as the fruits of his time and the labors of his body were handed out. As the wrapping paper was torn and thrown to the ground, we never stopped to think about the sacrifices he had made just to see us smile. The day he passed, I was able to spend a few hours alone with him in the hospital room, holding his hand and brushing his hair, quietly talking to him, still desperate to know more. And as the tears ran down my face and fell onto his bedside, I asked my father for one last thing, begging him to talk to me and reveal his true identity before he had to go, telling him how much I needed this, not only for what's to come, but that now I am too a father. The room stayed silent. Shortly after we said goodbye and let him embrace his rightful reward with the Lord, we gathered together as a family at the home he and my mom had worked so hard for all their lives. I was the last to enter and came through the front door and down the hall to see the family gathered in the dining room and lost in love for the man we knew all of our lives. As I stared at them grieving in their own ways, I was taken back by a few steps. It had finally happened. I finally got the answer I had desperately been seeking. Our father was gone, but his true identity was finally revealed. Who was my father? My father was us. My father, all of him, was broken down into different pieces of who we are. My father was equal parts strong and determined. He continues to live on him rightly. He was the quiet presence in the back of the room, full of a boisterous family that made the gathering feel complete. He lives on in Trent. He was a diligent hard worker with boots worn down to the soles. He continues to live on in Tyler. He was witty and always loved to make a quick joke. He continues to live on in Keepsake. He was determined and able to do what he put his mind to. He continues to live on in Grace. He was hospitable and his door was always open. He continues to live on in Summer. He was certainly a very uniquely opinionated man. He continues to live on in Rai. He was strong-willed and often got his way. He continues to live on in Corbin. He had an innocence and was childlike and full of wonder. He continues to live on in Ophelia. He was endlessly patient in the face of stubborn adversity. He continues to live on in Sarah. He had a soft and gentle nature. He continues to live on in Melee. He was a fighter, strong and passionate. He continues to live on in Shanda. He found peace just sitting in the same room with my mom. He continues to live on with Raven. He was quirky, a blurt out whatever was on his mind goofball. He continues to live on in Lynn. He was a man who loved his family so much that at 3 a.m., he would get out of bed and come jump your car, grumbling all the way. He continues to live on in Jeremy. He loved God with all of his heart and shared his faith with everyone he met. He continues to live on in Aaron. He was deeply committed to the people he loved. He continues to live on my mom. My father's son rose and set for his wife and children, and he would lay down his life for them in a heartbeat. He continues to live on in me. Want to know my father on a deep and personal level? Look at his family. And you will know Steve DeLong in the most personal way you could have ever known him. A man who possessed so many good qualities that his legacy was never built by hands to honor him, was never forged in gold to pay tribute to him, and could never be store-bought. My father's legacy and true identity lies in the fact that forevermore this family will carry pieces of who he truly was and continue to pass them down. I apologize, I lost my place. I'm so sorry about that. And he continues to pass them down to our children and our grandchildren. That the course of the DeLong name and all those loved and raised and touched by him will forever go on, touched and changed by this man. He has done what all of us have hoped to do before our time is up. He has left his mark on this world and will forever live on because he changed us, and now we use those pieces of him to change, touch, and love those around us. What a legacy and what a man. Who after all these years I have finally come to understand and know. I couldn't have asked for more. Thank you, Dad. We will all miss you more than you will ever know. And in the best representation I know how to do, it is my honor to present to you Steve DeLong.
When I think back on these times and the dreams we left behind, I'll be glad 'cause I was blessed to get to have you in my life. When I look back on these days, I'll look and see your face. You were right there for me. In my dreams I'll always see you soar above the sky. In my heart there'll always be a place for you for all my life. I'll keep a part of you with me, and everywhere I am there you'll be. And everywhere I am there you'll be. Will you show me how it feels to feel the sky within my reach? And I always will remember all the strength you gave to me. Your love made me make it through. Oh, I owe so much to you. You were right there for me. In my dreams I'll always see you soar above the sky. In my heart there'll always be a place for you for all my life. I'll keep a part of you with me, and everywhere I am there you'll be. 'Cause I always saw in you my light, my strength. And I wanna thank you now for all the ways you were right there for me. You were right there for me. In my dreams I'll always see you soar above the sky. In my heart there'll always be a place for you for all my life. I'll keep a part of you with me, and everywhere I am there you'll be. And everywhere I am there you'll be. There you'll be.
Listen, everyone, the time will come when all of us say goodbye. Feel that aching in your heart, leaving you broken inside. But we're never really gone, as long as there's a memory in your mind. So now go do the best things in life. Take a bite of this world while you can. Make the most of the rest of your life. Make a right of this world while you can. Take the ones you love and hold them close, because there is little time. And don't let it break your heart. I know it feels hopeless sometimes, but they're never really gone, as long as there's a memory in your mind.
When tomorrow starts without me, and I'm not there to see, if the sun should rise and find your eyes all filled with tears for me, I wish so much you wouldn't cry the way you did today, while thinking of the many things we didn't get to say. I know how much you love me, as much as I love you, and each time that you think of me, I know you'll miss me too. But when tomorrow starts without me, please try to understand that an angel came and called my name and took me by the hand and said my place was ready in heaven far above, and that I'd have to leave behind all those I dearly love. But as I turned to walk away, a tear fell from my eye. For all my life I'd always thought I didn't want to die. I had so much to live for, so much left yet to do. It seemed almost impossible that I was leaving you. I thought of all the yesterdays, the good ones and the bad. I thought of all the love we shared and all the fun we had. If I could relive yesterday, just even for a while, I'd say goodbye and kiss you, and maybe see you smile. But then I fully realized that this could never be, for emptiness and memories would take the place of me. And when I thought of worldly things I might miss come tomorrow, I thought of you, and when I did, my heart was filled with sorrow. But when I walked through heaven's gates, I felt so much at home. When God looked down and smiled at me from his great golden throne, he said, "This is eternity, and all I've promised you. Today, your life on earth is past, but here life starts anew. I promise no tomorrow, but today will all was lost, and since each day is the same, there's no longing for the past. You have been so faithful, so trusting and so true, though there were times you did some things you knew you shouldn't do. But you have been forgiven, and now at last you're free. So won't you come and take my hand and share my life with me? So when tomorrow starts without me, don't think we're far apart, for every time you think of me, I'm right here in your heart."
Thank you, Aaron, for that video, the family. Man, I don't know if I have much to do tonight. A little bit about me. My name's Dave Rentzel. If you didn't know, in a sense, I'm the oldest of all the brothers. I've known Steve since I've been 4 years old. I remember Jeremy and I have got pictures of us opening presents, probably trying to fight over it. I'm a month older than Jeremy. My mom, Paula, and Mary have been friends for years. And it's been a blessing to know the DeLong family. And, for the longest time, honestly, I always thought Steve was Jeremy and Aaron's dad. So we got older. Because that shows the character of Steve and who he is. You know, you see families today that are mixed. Well, that's his children. But Steve wasn't like that, and we saw that in his life. He just loved. That's why I tease about being the oldest brother, because he loved me just like one of them. I wasn't just Paula's son. I was David. I was one of the boys. And he loved me, and he loved me hard. And when I think about Steve and all that has happened, in some ways it's not real. It's just, you look at it and it's just, it's hard to believe it's real. You have mixed emotions. You have some numbness inside of you, but you have an understanding of life happens and these things do happen. But it's going to be hard for me because it's always, we're going to Stephen Maris. And this poem is so true because we know and we have a comfort and a peace that he has reached the promise that he's lived for. Everything that he's done, his life has shown, has all been for Jesus. And when I started thinking about Steve, a word immediately came to my mind. And it was the word consistent. And a lot of things are perspective and how we see things. But from my perspective, Steve was always consistent. It never seemed like to me that there was a time that Steve was never there. He was always there. Consistent in the definition says always acting or behaving in the same way. One day I would come over and I would get Steve, and the next day I would come over and I'd get the same Steve. There was no changing. There was no wondering who he was going to be. He was very consistent. When you look at more definition of the word consistent, it said marked by harmony, regularity, steady continuity, free from variation or contradiction, marked by agreement, showing steady conformity to character, profession, belief. And that was Steve. I even tried to think of times being in the home that when us boys were playing in roughhousing, him yelling at us to tell us to stop. I mean, I remember when we would come over to the house, the boys immediately we all went to the basement. And I've got a brother that's 11 months younger than me, so it goes me, Jeremy, my brother Drew, Aaron, and all of a sudden Josh showed up. I really feel kind of bad for Josh sometimes. He always seemed to be the kid we'd run from and tease, but he turned out all right. But you know what? Steve loved us all the same. There wasn't anything that we can do to seem to be wrong, maybe in our own perspective, but he just always had his arms open. I knew if I tried to call Mara to get a hold of her, I knew I could call Steve to find her. I'm like, did Mara just, ghost me? And I called Steve. There he was. Steady Steve. Consistent Steve. Hey, Steve, this is Dave. Oh, Dave, how you doing? Just like it was yesterday. He always had his home open. I remember there was times we've had moved away and have not been able to always connect all the time. And I would come in town, and it always was my mission to take at least whatever time I had to try to drop in. And the door was always open. But the door was always open, and there were like hundreds of kids everywhere. Climbing on stuff, doing things. You know, Mara always seemed to have a new foster child. We started learning to like and love. And then, of course, Raven and Lynn came, and they stayed. But Steve's heart was so big. He was consistent in everything that he did. And that's what God calls us to be in our lives. If you want an example of what God has called us to be, how to walk, how to act, how to live, and how to love, you will see that in the life of Steve DeLong. Now, are we perfect? No. Have there been some times that he has made mistakes? Absolutely. But I will tell you, the memory of Steve out far passes any mistakes that he's made in his life, because he always had it his goal to show the love of Christ. He was patient. He was long-suffering. He never boasted. He did have a lot of conspiracy theories. Lots. He may have loved his Ohio State Buckeyes a little too much, but God will forgive him for that. That Ohio State shirt, plaid shirt that you saw in there, I swear he slept in it. Like, he loved it. Every time I'd see him, he would wear that. But Steve was a good man. That song that we heard, that I'm a life that was changed, I'm a life that was changed because of Steve. No pity story for me, but I didn't come from a good home. But when we would see Steve and Mara, I saw consistency in a mom and dad. I saw a relationship that how God intended for relationships to be. And that helped me to be consistent in my life and how to be a father and how to be a husband because of what he showed me in the times that we were with them. He would come up to Mary and kiss her on her cheek, tell his silly little jokes, right? I do like the fact that it was funny that he would laugh at his own jokes when nobody else was laughing. I do remember that. You know, and Steve was always jolly. And it may have been because his cheeks were always rosy. I don't know if there's coincidence. But he always had, even when things were rough, you would never be able to tell that things were rough. He just moved forward. He handled them as they went. Yeah, as the boys, as teenagers, we all give our families some problems. We all mess up. And sometimes we buck against the system. But I'll tell you, boys, your dad loved you, and he loved you hard. And he loved you all the way through it. Because he loved you as Christ loves you. Because that's the only love that he really knew. Because as you said out of your own mouths, his history didn't have that love. And when he found the love of Christ, he tried to give it as best as he could and as hard as he could for you. And for the girls, when they came into his life, the same thing. Because he wanted the best for you. Sometimes it's hard for us to see that, though. When somebody's trying to, where you think it's like they're all up in your grill and keep telling me what to do and what I shouldn't do. And it's hard to see it sometimes. But the thing that the Lord gives us is the hindsight. And we can look back and we can see the love in it and what he was trying to do. Steve lived a life that changed lives. Every single one of those children that came through the daycare were changed because of Steve and Mara. The foster children that came through were changed because of Steve and Mara. Adults that would drop their children off would see the love that they had in their home and towards their children. Their lives were changed because of Steve and Mara. And I'm a life that was changed because of Steve and Mara. Whenever I talk about them, it's my second mom and dad. I always know that I could pick up the phone and they would be there. Dependable, consistent, always loving, always giving. And again, I am thankful that I'm a life that has changed. I was reading in 2 Corinthians, and Paul talks about the resurrection and about this body that God has given us. And in verse 1 it says, "For we know that if our earthly house, this tent, is destroyed, we have a building from God, a house not made with hands, but it's eternal in heaven. For in this we groan earnestly, desiring to be clothed with our habitation from which it is from heaven, if indeed, having been clothed, we shall not be found naked. For we who are in this tent groan, being burdened, not because we want to be unclothed, but further clothed, that mortality may be swallowed up by life. Now he who has prepared us for this very thing is God, who also has given us his Spirit as a guarantee." Steve understood that this life was temporary, that this was a place of just a life to be able to reach heaven, that this body was not his final resting place, but there was a place that God had for him in heaven. And after talking with Josh, Steve never bragged about himself. He never was like one to, hey, I'm this, or I've been doing this. And when Josh and I were talking on the phone last week, he talked about meeting some friends from his work and how Steve changed their lives and showed love to them and talked. And, Steve, I wasn't home or there, but I never heard that. Because when Steve was around, his attention was always what was in front of him. What needed the love, what needed the attention, what was consistent there, and what needed to be there as an example. And so Steve ran this race, and he ran it well. He ran it better than well. He ran it great. And he's won his race because he knew that this was a temporary place. But God entrusted in him these wonderful gifts of his family and his friends to be Christ-like while he was here. And we can honor him tonight, and we can celebrate his life. Yes, we're sad that his physical being is not here, but you know what? God gives us the memories of the good times and the times that we came together, the times that we were able to hug his neck and talk to him and whisper in his ears and, listen to his silly jokes. That's the blessing that God gives us. And I know that there are some in here that know the Lord and have a relationship with him. But I believe that Steve would want me to ask this, that if you are here and you know God, but you don't have a relationship with him like you know that you should, that relationship is available to you. Because if you see Steve's life and how he lived, he made it look so easy. But that life is here for you as well. Thank you, Josh, for your words. Aaron, thank you. Jeremy, thank you. Thank you for being a brother to me. Thank you for being a friend to me. Thank you for, I never asked Steve what he thought about us being pastors. Because if you would have seen us in the basement at their house as kids, you probably wouldn't have ever thought it. But what would Dad say? What would he think? I believe he was proud. Proud of all of us and what we've become. Yes, we've had mistakes. Some things have messed up. But you know what? We've gotten over them. Because Steve was consistent. We knew Steve would be there. We knew he would give us the love like God would give us. And so if you're at a place in your life tonight that you're just not sure, that if this evening was your last night, would you be resting in the arms of the Lord? Come and speak to me after we're finished. Because I would love to share the love of Christ like Steve showed me, a life that was changed because of him, to help you make that change. And so before we dismiss tonight, I just want to say a prayer for the family and for the friends that are here. Lord, we thank you for your word. We thank you for your direction. God, I thank you that there was a day that Steve DeLong softened his heart so that he could hear your still small voice in his ear of love to him. A love that he had never experienced before. God, I thank you for the lives that Steve had encountered and that he had changed through who he was because of you in him. Lord, I thank you that there was a day that he fell in love with a beautiful young lady named Mara. That there would be a day that I would have the opportunity to see a man live a life for God. See a man that loved his wife correctly. To see a man that loved his children unconditionally. So that I would have that example for my life and for my family. God, I just ask that you bring peace and comfort in Mara and the children and the grandchildren. Lord, that when they look back and they see the memories, that there isn't any regrets in them, because when Steve was here, he gave it all. He lived for today, but prepared for tomorrow. But he lived for today. God, keep your hands upon us. Bless us. Bless all that are here. Lord, work into those people's hearts that are seeking after you, that want to know more about you. And let us be the same light that Steve was, so that people would get to know you. And we just thank you in your wonderful name, Jesus. Amen. Amen. Thank you all for being here this evening. Continue the celebration of life of Steve DeLong. If you would like to come and greet the family and hug their neck and tell them that you love them, I'm sure they would not mind. If you have to leave, drive safe, be careful. I think I heard some heavy rain. So be blessed. Thank you all for being here this evening.